All right. Hello, everybody, once again. Welcome to our webinar today, Maximizing Profits with Sponsored Products. Really, really big, important topic that we're really quite excited to dive into with y'all in as much detail as possible. So my name is Alex. I'm the one on the left, and I am in our data science and optimization team here at Takeometrics.
And my name is Sarah. I'm on the customer success team here at Takeometrics. So Alex and I will be leading you through today's topic.
Yeah, we're both really excited to be here, mostly because we just know how important this topic of conversation really is to a lot of people. We have our agenda that we're intending to get through with y'all for the next hour or so, but we want to make this as engaging as we possibly can, get you guys involved, asking questions and participating so you get the most out of today as possible. So we're going to be launching a few polls today, and there's a little question box that you guys can feel free to write in at any point during our webinar. We have some awesome members of our team that are going to be answering questions, Risa and Calvin. So any questions that you guys have, they'll answer, and we'll hopefully get to them at the end during our Q&A session. So let's just start off really quick. We're going to launch a poll. And like I said, we know what our goals of today are, but we really want to see exactly what you guys are aiming to get out of this. So I'm going to launch right now. And if you guys are listening, go ahead and answer in. The options are, one, I want to see if I can get a better return on my advertising dollars. Maybe you want to better understand which ad metrics to focus on. Maybe you just started using sponsored ads and need help starting out. Or perhaps you want to measure the impact that sponsored ads has on your entire business. So write them on in. Everyone keep participating. And yeah, I mean, those are all pretty good options, I think. I'm not sure what I would pick.
Yeah. Hopefully you guys will get a little bit of all of these things after today's conversation.
Okay, awesome. So we'll let it go for about 5-10 more seconds. But yeah, it looks like everyone's just about done. So let me close this poll and I'll share the results. So it looks like the majority of you guys want to see if you can get a better return on your advertising investment, which awesome. That's obviously what we're going to talk about quite a bit today. Other options, we got a few people trickling in for all of those, but yeah, big majority. So it's great.
Excellent.
So let's hide those results and let's double check that we can see the screen. Awesome. So these are our objectives for today. We pretty much want to just start out with understanding the impact that ads have on your entire business.
We really want to make sure that you're also going to be able to calculate your own bottom line. And then playing off of that, we want to make sure that you're set up to structure your sponsored products campaigns to be most profitable. We want to talk about which metrics you should be monitoring and looking to improve. And then ultimately, we want to make sure, how do you actually measure what we've been referring to a lot as the flywheel effect, but, that's how advertising is impacting your entire business.
Exactly. So the big question that is probably the most difficult question to answer if you're advertising on Amazon is, obviously we all know sponsored ads impacts your organic sales, but are your advertisements actually profitable, right? So that's really the major question we're going to help you guys answer today.
So what we have here is, the flywheel effect. And a great way to think about this is, as you go through this effect, you're increasing exposure, you're getting more sales is leading to a higher rank. And the faster this wheel starts turning, the better and better the growth of your business is going to be. And so what we have down in the corner is, sponsored products is going to fuel this fire. So if you think about the effect that running sponsored products ads has on this flywheel effect, it's going to help your business. It's going to help this effect, move faster and faster so that you're going to see your business grow at the rate that you want it to grow at. But what we really want to understand, is that question that Alex just asked, are those ads profitable, and how do you know how much it's fueling the fire, and really how to make sure that you're spending the right amount of money to be fueling this fire to really be impacting, the flywheel effect on your entire business.
Right. So I think like basically the big picture here is we all know that advertising, or I guess, regardless of where a conversion comes from, if it's from advertisements or if you're just getting sales organically, that's going to help increase your sales, which will help you get a higher sales rank, which will help you get even more exposure through advertisements, right? So it's this beautiful effect where you really see advertising driving a huge velocity of sales for your overall business. So advertising fits into the puzzle just to kind of increase that exposure, but also help you drive those organic sales. What I think is really interesting is, I bet a lot of people on this webinar have been running ads for a long time, but I'm not sure, maybe some people haven't been running ads for at all, or maybe people aren't even running them whatsoever. So, I'm curious to see, we're going to launch another poll really quickly. How long have you guys been running sponsored ads? So let me launch this because the flywheel effect is super relevant regardless. So maybe you guys have been running ads for less than a year, or maybe 1 to 2 years, between 2 and 5, over 5 years. And then the last option, I'm not currently running sponsored ads at all. Perfect. Yep. It looks like we're almost through with everyone running or everyone voting. We'll let it go for about 5 more seconds. Perfect. So let me close this. Looks like we have about everybody voting, and we'll share the results. Okay, so it looks like 41% of you guys have been running ads for about less than a year. We got a bunch of people running them between 1 and 2 to 5 years, and then 20% of you guys aren't running sponsored ads at all, which is honestly, this is a pretty good starting point if we're going to start talking about how you should run ads that are profitable. So let's see. We'll go here. Perfect. So thank you guys so much for your participation here. And I think like a big thing is we would like to kind of walk you guys through an experience that we've had with one of our sellers. So we're going to meet John. He's a little bit behind. He's been selling baseball caps on Amazon, and it's obviously his busy season right now, spring season. He sells all of these baseball caps for $15.99 a pop, and it only costs him $2.99 to make these. So he's actually not running sponsored ads right now. He used to, but his overall campaigns, he was worried he was spending too much money and wasn't seeing a big enough return on investment. So he paused everything. And the reason is he just really wants to make sure he profits from his advertisements for every product. The major problem that he's facing now is that he isn't sure how much he's actually making at the end of the day. Because as we all know, right, there's tons of additional fees that come with selling on Amazon. And he doesn't want to risk spending tons of money on ads if he can't actually afford to do it. So before we really go into how to maximize his profitability with advertisements, we really just need to start at the beginning and calculate his profit margin, right? Because only then can we actually say how much he can afford to spend on ads and what his ACOS should be if we want him to make money on those sales. So let's focus here, right? That begs the question, what is John's account level profitability? We all know how to log into Seller Central and check our daily sales and the business reports. That's the fun part. You get to see all of your sales trickling in every day. But do you guys really know how much profit is left over after you factor in shipping and returns and refunds and promotional giveaways and those ever-present Amazon fees? So I think what we really want to just say to begin with is we care about John's profit margin, right? The percentage of sales that are left after taking away all of those costs. And we calculate this metric by taking John's gross sales, or his top line revenue, minus his cost of goods sold, or COGS, and minusing his operating expenses, dividing it by revenue, and multiplying it by 100. So it kind of sounds confusing, but let's just say John makes $1,000 in revenue. It costs him $400 to make the product, and everything relating to the product is what your cost of goods sold are. And then he also has operating costs, so account level charges not attributed to specific SKUs. So things like storage fees and return fees and damaged inventory. Just divide that by your total sales and multiply by 100. So he'd get a 50% margin. You have anything else to add to that, Sarah? Is that, I feel like I was convoluted description.
No, this I think is a really helpful calculation. Talking to a lot of sellers, a lot of people have questions on this. So, don't be worried if you are taking notes too. We're going to send out a recording of this webinar. So just kind of soak in as much of this information as you can. But when it comes to kind of the mathematical parts of it, you don't have to worry as much, because we will be sending out a copy of the recording as well.
Right. So just to clarify what each of these metrics mean, your gross sales are going to be your total sales for a given time period, which is at the end of the top line revenue that you make. Your cost of goods sold, or COGS, is what we'll simplify it as today, is all of the fees associated with the products that you sell on Amazon. So what it costs you to make it, the fees associated with selling on Amazon, and then also advertising dollars too, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then operating expenses is going to be all of those account level charges that aren't attributed to an individual SKU. So as I mentioned before, it's going to be storage fees and damages and all of these other, account level charges Amazon puts on your payments reports.
Yeah.
So let's take it a step farther, right? We put all those things together and we see the most accurate view of John's bottom line with this account level profit and loss statement. So it looks a bit confusing, but it's actually quite simple. The top section of your P&L, your profit and loss statement, is going to be your gross sales, or your total revenue over a given time period. So in this case, let's just say we're looking at his sales from March specifically, 1 month of data. Because although John's gross sales are, it looks like he's making $79,000 a month, he is definitely not taking home $79,000 a month. Because first and foremost, think about it, he has all of these returns coming through and promotional costs, he's giving out discounts. So promotions, just to clarify, are not sponsored ads or advertisements, but are rather things like lightning deals and coupons and % off discounts, etc. So now we're down to $71,000. So already chopped off a decent sized portion. Wow, it looks like John had a lot of returns in March, which is a crazy amount. And then you have to consider all of those costs associated with the products that he sells. We said that before, it cost John $2.99 to manufacture each one of his baseball caps. And then there are those pesky referral fees, i.e. the commission Amazon charges you per sale. And because John is in clothing, shoes, and jewelry, his referral fee actually just increased from 15% of every sale to 17% of every sale on April 15th. We have a fulfillment fees, the cost that it takes Amazon to actually fulfill the order, which is about 15% across the board. But what we don't see in this section, right, Sarah, is advertising costs.
Right. So this, what you can see right under where it says cost of goods sold, this is where you would want to also incorporate those advertising costs, because that is a major point of spend for a lot of people who are running sponsored product ads in particular, and those do need to be taken into account as the price that you're also paying to get these goods sold.
Right. And a big goal of our conversation today is going to be figure out how much John can pay for advertisements. So once you subtract all of that, you get your gross profit. So we see John's resting at a nice 38.19%. And then what most people don't add in to their bottom line are those other account level charges or operating expenses. So these are things, like I said, damage inventory, storage fees, etc., to get down to your final operating profit. And then once we divide, operating profit by your net sales, or I'm sorry, by your gross sales. So take the $29,000 divided by the $79,000, we get this profit margin overall at an account level of 36.99%. So it's all good and fun, right? Account level is great, but in my opinion, I'm sure that you've seen this all the time too, is people assume that every product in their catalog has the same margin, which is rarely the case, unfortunately. Account level is good. I mean, profitability really matters at the individual supplier level, and then even farther than that, at the product level. We saw that John had like $7,900 of returns come through. Perhaps the majority came from one product specifically. He can't know that for sure unless he looks at the bottom line for every single individual SKU. So let's just like dig deeper a little bit, because although this seems a bit like arbitrary, it really matters. Like your product level profitability matters quite a bit, especially when it comes to advertising strategy. So we'll just briefly walk through this, but we can see that this is just a product level P&L statement, the same thing as we saw on the last screen for one of John's Red Sox caps and then one of his Yankees caps. So after all costs associated with selling the Red Sox cap, we can see his profit margin is 42%. The Yankees cap, on the other hand, is 25% margin, right? So we can see, look at the huge difference in return sales that he saw. His Yankees cap had tons of returns, almost $5,000 of returns, and his Red Sox cap had not even $1,000. It's amazing. I mean, it looks like something's clearly going on with the returns there. And at the end of the day, even though his gross sales for the Red Sox cap were less than the gross sales for the Yankees cap, he ended up making more money off of the Red Sox cap.
Yeah, he's making more money per sale. That's essentially what this percentage is going to tell you for those Red Sox caps, even though his total gross sales for those Yankees caps is higher.
Yeah, no, totally. And you should do this work for each one of your products to see how much you're actually making on every sale, because it really does impact the amount of money you're going to have left over to spend on advertising. So before we even move forward into that, let's launch one of our final polls today. We want to see, what is your product margin, if you guys know it. So let's just launch this now and y'all can let us know. And let me check out if there's any good questions.
Be account level for sure. What's that average margin across your products on the account level?
Yeah, exactly. And y'all, if you have any questions, please write them into that little question box. We want to make sure that you're getting as much out of this as possible. Really excited to see what you guys are saying in here. Options: under 10%, between 10 and 20%, between 20 and 40%, over 40%, or I am not sure. So, wow, you guys are great at voting. We have pretty much everybody already contributing. Thank y'all so much. We'll do 5 more seconds. 3, 2, 1. Let's close it and share the results. Okay, cool. So we can see that about 3% of you guys at under 10%. The majority of people are between 20 and 40%. And then we have a lot of people between 10 and 20% too. Yeah, really interesting. 19% of you guys said not sure. Don't worry about that. We'll tell you how to do it right now. So let's see. Yep, so it's relatively, I guess, honestly, it's kind of a convoluted process, to be honest, if you don't have an accounting software or you don't have a profitability software. And we definitely recommend getting one of those instead of doing this manually. But if you go ahead and head over to your Seller Central account, you can download it from the reports drop-down menu. So just select payments, and then you want to look at all statements, and you want to download the flat file V2, which will show any transaction that occurred during a certain time period. So it is a bit difficult to analyze as a big bulk file, but what you really want to do is use this report to facilitate your decision making over time. So for example, say you look at it today and then a month from today you check it out and you notice that your revenue grew exponentially, right? This should be a line, you should have a little bell dinging in your brain that says uh-oh, did my expenses also grow exponentially month over month? Like maybe I spent too much on advertising. Like I should go check and see what's happening there. So big takeaway here, I think, Sarah, maybe you can take it away.
Yeah, you want to make sure that you're calculating your product margin every month for each of your products, because only then are you really going to be able to create profitable sponsored products campaigns. And so, this conversation, we just talked a lot about, seeing how your business is performing based on comparing those sales and all of those costs and fees associated with being a seller on Amazon. And we didn't even take into account, advertising costs.
Right, that's so true.
So now what we really want to do is make sure that you understand, why knowing these margins is so important to running profitable sponsored products campaigns.
Exactly. So how can you use your campaigns to create campaigns that are profitable?
Yeah, so what you want to do is, the first step to running profitable sponsored products campaigns is that you're organizing your catalog into campaigns based on product margin. So, you want to be thinking about, first off, what's the category? You want to organize by category. You want to organize by your business objective. So in this case, we're looking at our goal, which is going to be column E, profitability. But then we're also looking at column D, which is the product margin. Really, when we think about that, we know that John can spend more on his Red Sox caps than he can on his Yankees caps. We figured that out by doing this product margin, these calculations. So we really want to make sure that we put those in two separate advertising campaigns.
Even farther than that though, look, right? Because yes, we obviously want to break it down by category. So I think Red Sox caps and Yankees caps would be separate anyways. But look at the two different Yankees caps, right? Like those two Yankees caps have two different margins.
Right. So the amount that John has to spend on Yankees cap number 1, because that product margin's at 29%, versus what he can spend on Yankees cap number 2 with only 15% is going to be different. And that's really going to impact, where he's thinking about ACOS and what he's thinking about advertising spend. So he's going to want to make sure that those two caps, Yankees 1 and 2, are also in different campaigns, regardless of the fact that they have the same category and the same objective.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, I mean, I totally agree, right? This is the exact situation that we just walked through, essentially.
Right, because we're thinking, here, just to put it in more perspective, doing that math, if John sells Yankees caps for $15.99, the product margin is 29% after all those costs. You see that he's going to end up with $4.63 to spend on ads per sale versus that 15% margin, only $2.40 to spend. So this is just really to make that very clear, why he's going to want to separate those two products out, even though in a lot of cases you might assume if you were just looking at, category and goal, that you'd want them in the same campaign. So at the end of the day, if your product margins vary per category, you're going to want to create separate campaigns with separate budgets and spend thresholds. Because that's why, in order to simplify evaluation and really making sure that you're hitting a point of optimization, it's recommended to only put together products with the same or very similar margins. We recommend about anything within a 10% range. Yeah. And because that's going to help you, figure out that break-even ACOS.
Yeah, so we'll get into that in a moment. Yeah, so I mean, we want to just make sure that your target profit is reached for every single one of those products in that campaign. Unless their margins are the same, we won't be able to say that with any with any basis in fact, I suppose. So Sarah, maybe we can just walk through briefly how you should be configuring your campaign specifically, just in a little bit more detail.
Yeah, absolutely. We just told you, how to break down your catalog and really emphasizing the difference in margin. But these are going to be the 3 things that you're going to want to make sure when you're doing that campaign configuration. This is the checklist you want to hit off. Each campaign should reflect products or product lines with similar margins and objectives. We said that one. It's going to let you measure performance at the campaign and ad level. Your ad groups should be used to further characterize your product variations. So, you want to make sure that if you have different sizes, let's say all of those Yankee Caps 2 are in one campaign, if you have different sizes of those, but they all have the same margin, they can be broken down by ad group, because that's really just going to allow you to make those variations more targeted. And then lastly, we're going to have, all automatic campaigns should have a mirrored manual campaign with identical ad groups and products. So let's just show you quickly, what that outcome looks like.
Totally, yeah. So, we know that his Yankees, we already said that his Yankees caps their margins are too different, right? So we want to separate them out into two different campaigns. And first and foremost, we'd have, a Yankees cap auto campaign and then a Yankees cap manual campaign. As Sarah mentioned before, you want to break it down into ad groups by product-specific attributes. So it looks like he has two different Yankees caps that we put in two different ad groups with all their sizes that have that same margin.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is, going to facilitate what we talk about a lot is that mirrored campaign structure. Again, really important, the naming schemes that you can see here for these campaigns and ad groups. Super easy for John to know the margin of all of the products in his campaigns. He knows which one's the auto, which one's the manual, which ones coincide with each other. And, it's really going to be helpful as he's trying to optimize these campaigns, that his campaigns are structured exactly like this.
100%. We say mirrored campaign structure, right? I think it's super important to also note that the name of the campaign is really important too, which is awesome, Sarah. Thanks for bringing that up before. So now that his campaigns are properly set up, right, he'll be able to ensure that they're super profitable, XYZ, as Sarah just went through. So let's talk through really quickly, right? So we have campaigns structured correctly. Now what do we do, right?
Right. So, we've calculated how much money we're making. We've set up our campaigns for success. And now we really need to start focusing on, those advertising metrics that you shouldn't be ignoring. Because just because, John has set everything up properly doesn't mean that his work is done. If John wants to make sure that his campaigns are maximized for profitability, he needs to pay attention to these really key metrics. The first one being ACOS. So, we talk about ACOS a lot, but we'll dive into that a bit further. The second being wasted ad spend. We're going to walk through, a couple different strategies to make sure that you're maximizing and reducing that wasted ad spend. And then lastly, just talking about your conversion rate and how you're going to want to be calculating specifically that for your advertisements. And so really thinking about, what is the reason why we can't ignore these? We need to, improve these metrics. It means you're going to start improving your campaign's profitability. It's going to impact your total sales, but is ultimately going to impact your total profitability.
That's exactly right, I think. And it does look like we have a few questions coming in. Really good questions that we can just briefly go through before anybody and before we move on a little bit farther, just because they were related to that profit margin and cost analysis that we did. So great question from Diane, who asked, product margin, is this operating profit or gross profit? So I would say operating profit, because you want to make sure you take into consideration all of the costs associated with your item, but also all of those account level costs as well. So you want to take the operating profit divided by the total revenue in order to get your profit margin specifically. Another really good question from Emilio, who says, I have a product with a 45% margin. Which is the ideal ACOS for launching? Sarah, what do you think?
Yeah, so we have an excellent, resource on this, but really thinking about, if you set your ACOS for these products to to 45%. So let's actually go back quickly and just take a look at John's campaigns here, right? So the reason that we're telling you to put that margin in the title of your campaigns is because it's going to be really helpful to know, if your ACOS is performing at this, the same level. So let's take Yankees Caps with the 29%. If the ACOS, the target ACOS for this would be 29% as well, John would essentially be at his break-even point, because the 29%, that represents the margin, that leftover money that John's putting in his pocket. And then he's also using that 29% to focus on the ACOS, which is the amount that he's spending
on
to advertise.
Exactly.
So what, in a launch case, so anything below 29% is actually where those products are going to be when they're in that profitability stage.
But I would also argue that because the question is, if we're trying to launch a product, the goal is not going to be profitability, which is interesting.
Exactly. So, if he has a product with 29%, or in this case, Emilio's question
at 45
for a launch, I would recommend going anywhere up to maybe 60, 65%.
Right.
Because when we're talking about launching products versus, on this webinar, we're talking about profitability. You want to make sure that when you're launching products, you're thinking about advertising as an investment. So coming all the way back to those first couple slides about the flywheel effect, you're using sponsored products to really be thinking about, how can I boost visibility? You need to be thinking about reviews. How do you, focus on impressions and just number of clicks
and exposure, right? Increase exposure, increase organic sales, increase your total sales rank, which will in turn help increase everything. So it's fueling the fire even more at the beginning of the product life cycle. These profitability campaigns that we're talking about today are really more geared towards a product that has been on Amazon for a little while and is more mature, and you're really looking to lower your costs. So we want to make sure that the goal here is to make incremental revenue at a profitable rate. In comparison, launching a product, the goal, I would never recommend launching a product and having your sponsored ad campaigns be about being profitable. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, thinking about advertising as an investment, that's going to be really key when you're launching products. And then once they get to this life cycle, which, a huge part of running profitable campaigns for sponsored products is that, you've optimized them, what search terms you've used, what you can see here, these auto campaigns to do keyword discovery. You're maximizing on those search terms, adding them in as keywords and directly into those manual campaigns. And then, you're making bid changes, you're figuring out, where is that perfect point of spend for you. And again, that's really just to get into that profitable place to be running, profitability aimed sponsored products campaigns. That comes after that launch point.
100%. I think Craig just wrote in and said he summarized it much more articulately than I was able to, but he says at product launch, traffic and conversions equals Amazon ranking. As your ranking increases, your visibility increases, and then you lower ACOS over time, which is literally the perfect way to put this. Thank you, Craig. You just nailed it, hit the nail on the head. We're getting a lot of questions about product launch here, which is so great because the webinar that we hosted before this was all about how to launch our products, or how to launch our products, how to launch your products. So I know it's on YouTube.
It's also on our website. So if you go to takeametrics.com and you click on, the tab, that has, our blog as well as our webinars, you're going to want to watch this. The last sponsored product masterclass was all about, launching products. It's going to walk you through, a similar campaign structure, but it's going to tell you kind of where you want those ACOSs to be, and then
how to optimize your listings and all of that good stuff too. So yeah, honestly, thank you guys so much for your questions. Yes, I can definitely restate what Craig said. So Craig says at product launch, conversions equals Amazon ranking. And then as your ranking increases, your visibility increases, which helps you to lower your ACOS over time. It takes at least a month. Honestly, haven't seen it work in less than 2 to 3 months at the beginning, but that's entirely correct.
And I think that really plays into this, right? Because we're talking about those advertising metrics you can't ignore. And these are really the advertising metrics you can't ignore for profitability, right? So Craig just said, your focus when you're in a launch stage, you're going to be focusing on impressions and clicks. You're focused on exposure. And then again, with growth, you still might be focused on, clicks and how much exposure you're getting, but you're also really focusing on sales. But then when it gets to profitability, you're keying down, you're really looking into, what's my ACOS at? How does that relate to my margin? How can I reduce wasted ad spend? Where are the places that I'm really overspending? And then what's your overall conversion rate?
Exactly.
So let's dive into these 3 metrics.
Yeah, and let's just start with the one that everybody loves, which is ACOS, right? Everybody loves to talk about ACOS, or advertising cost of sale. I like to think of it as simply a measure of your advertising efficiency. So all you're doing is you're taking your ad spend and you're dividing it by your advertising sales, multiplying it by 100. So for example, you spend $10 in ads, you make $100 in ad sales, that would make your ACOS 10%. Right? And the reason, most sellers use ACOS to determine the success of their advertising campaigns, right? Even John, at the beginning, he was running his advertisements, and then he decided that a 50% ACOS was way too high, so he just paused everything, right? The difficulty in this, though, is like defining the correct ACOS, like the correct value for an ACOS, I would say, because honestly, ACOS alone doesn't say anything about how profitable a campaign is. So unless you go through and do all of that cost analysis, create a P&L for your own products, you'll really need to, do that before you can determine whether ACOS is good or bad. You want to look at the entire cost structure of your product. So, good thing we just walked through how to do that exactly as we say. And this is just super important because we set up our campaigns by margin for one major reason. If your campaign ACOS is beneath the product margin of that campaign, you know that your campaign is profitable. So for example, right, those Yankees Caps Auto 25% campaign has to run at an ACOS beneath 25% for you to make incremental profit on those sales. Seems easy, easy enough, right? But it is a bit difficult because more times than not, you'll go in there and you'll notice that ACOS of that campaign is a little bit higher than what your profit margin is. So what would we do then, Sarah?
Yeah, so I think we'll hop into that when ACOS is extremely high, ways to bring that down for a campaign overall. But another thing that's really important to think about is, that ACOS for a specific campaign is really it's not taking into account all of the products within that campaign, which is also something that we really care about.
Mm-hmm.
So if you see here in bold, Alex has, download your advertised product report. That's under your ad reports. And that's going to get you 30 days worth of data to find your products with your highest ACOS.
Right. So to me, in order to control ACOS, you have to dig deeper. Looking at a high ACOS is just like a bell going off in my brain saying something else is wrong. What is wrong that is causing my ACOS to be too high? And like Sarah said, more often than not, you want to look and see the specific products in that campaign that are driving up ACOS the most. Right? Because perhaps you go in there and you notice that a few of those products are working super well. They have like a 5% ACOS and you're super happy. I'd be excited to see that. But then a few other products might be at like 90%. If that's way above your margin, like that should be sending off bells in your brain saying, what about this product is not working in my campaign? Mm-hmm. So what would you do in that circumstance?
Yeah, so take that advertised product report. You could even, filter that
mm-hmm.
to look specifically at maybe even just a single campaign. You can even look at a single ad group. you have multiple products within that ad group. And what you're going to be able to do is identify, the products, specifically those SKUs that have really high ACOS or even really low ACOS. Again, you can look at how much spend they're getting, how much sales. And at the end of the day, you're going to be able to pick out those products. If you have a couple, let's say the distressed Yankees cap performing at 90%, while the camel Yankees hat, they're in the same ad group, is performing at 5%, you can take that product, and what I would do is I would create a brand new campaign for it.
Right. So this actually relates to a really great question that we got from Lior. He goes, how long should you let a campaign run before coming to the conclusion that it is no longer profitable or worthwhile? And I say, before you make that executive decision, separate the products out that are doing poorly, create a new campaign for those products, and then let that old campaign run and see if those products in there that were currently doing well are still doing well. I like to make decisions over at least a 3-month time span in general. So sometimes if a product isn't working really well in sponsored ads in general over like a 3-month period of time, there's clearly something else going on with the listing or the price, or perhaps it's super saturated and you just can't expect to make a profit on it. So those are all circumstances that I see a lot, but Lior, typically we just like to create those new campaigns with those products that are doing poorly, let everything run for usually a 3-month period of time, and then decide to make the executive decision to change things about either your product, see what people are complaining about, is it the price, etc., before turning anything off for good and just saying this will never be profitable.
Yeah, because if you think about it, there are some products where it might be a bit more obvious to you that, in a specific ad group, if all of your color variations are in the same ad group, let's say, but just your black product sells extremely well, and that's what's taking up the majority of your campaign budget. It has enough sales, it's getting the majority of the spend. It has a well-performing ACOS. That product should probably be in its own campaign so that you can really, allow those other products to take up some of the spend and bring those ACOSs to a place that you're comfortable with them being.
Right. And I think this actually leads us really well into our next topic, which is wasted ad spend. So say, for instance, you notice that some products have a really high ACOS. In my brain, I'm thinking, okay, let's take it a step farther. I care more about what people are typing in to Amazon's search bar that are causing them to click on those specific products with a high ACOS and not purchase them, right? So something I like to always remember in the back of my brain is that Amazon is really just a search engine, right? People go to Amazon with the intent to buy something. They type what they want into the search bar, and Amazon's algorithm says, hey, here are the products that people have bought many times before after they typed in those exact same keywords. Very relevant. Like, we think you probably want to buy these other products too, right? What happens a lot is Amazon serves up your ad or John's ad and for customer search terms that maybe aren't super relevant to the product. And what happens then? Wasted ad spend. Search terms with spend and no sales or a high ACOS, right? Because perhaps those products with a high ACOS in your campaigns are showing up for things that are not relevant at all. I would say that in order to decrease the ACOS, before pausing anything, go in there and see what is racking up all of that spend that isn't converting into sales. So for me, what I like to do is go in there and download the search term report for at least the last 60 days and pinpoint the offending search terms. And by offending, I simply mean anything in the customer search term column that has generated excess spend, right? Whatever you guys decide is too much spend, too many clicks. It's honestly arbitrary. In general, I suppose I look at anything with like 10 to 20 clicks with no sales over the last 30 days. And I say, okay, is this related to the product in that campaign or ad group? If it's not, what do? you add in a negative exact keyword, right? That makes sure that the product in question will not show up for those customer search terms in question that we just discussed. So maybe an example would help.
Yeah, a really great example of this, a relatively obvious one might be if you think about John's products, let's say a lot of customers are searching for red baseball caps, but John doesn't carry that color. So, that's racked up maybe, like you said, about 11 or 12 clicks. He spent maybe about $5 on that, but it hasn't generated any sales for him. So what he's going to want to do, he doesn't want to negate, anything related to baseball caps, but the specific exact keyword, that red baseball caps, he wants to add that in as a negative exact keyword specifically to the campaign or the ad group. That
always ad group, always ad group. Never add negative keywords to the campaign. Always add it to the ad group in question that is performing poorly for that specific string of text in that order, nothing else. So like, for instance, so say like his Yankees caps are showing up for Cubs baseball caps. He does not sell any Cubs baseball caps in that ad group. Add that in as a negative exact keyword. Now you're not going to show up for those specific strings of text, right? I think that that's the big deal.
Yeah.
And then another big thing, right, is to decrease bids. So manual campaigns, when you find keywords that you want your products to show up for and you add them into your manual campaigns, perhaps you notice that the ACOS of a specific keyword is super, super high, right? Maybe it's over 100%. And you're still getting a few sales, but like not really enough to justify the cost or the expense to you. So rather than simply negating that keyword, you would want to go in there and increase or decrease bids in this circumstance, right? You want to decrease your bids to avoid overspending on keywords you can't afford.
Yeah, so in this case, maybe the keyword is just baseball caps, right? So that's a pretty general term. And even though it's related to what John's selling, he doesn't want to negate it because he definitely wants to be showing up for those search terms. But he wants to, that bid because it's just a really general, it's really popular. A lot of people are searching
so much competition, really expensive.
A lot of money. Yeah. The ACOS is really high. He's going to go in and, decrease the bid on that because he doesn't want to be bidding at the top, like against all of his competitors. He only wants to be bidding a bit lower to make sure that the ACOS for that specific keyword just isn't that high.
Exactly.
So lastly, what we have is conversion rate. So again, this is where talking about profitability really comes into play. We talked about eliminating wasted ad spend by avoidance. So we're not going to show up. So in the grand scheme of things, the purpose of this was, of course, we really want to make sure we're bringing more eyes to John's products. And we really want to do is bring the right eyes to John's products.
Totally agreed, right? Like John does not care about clicks. He cares about those clicks converting into sales. He cares about the orders, right? His goal is profitability. All he wants is for things to actually convert into a sale. And to be honest, that's what Amazon wants too, right? Amazon cares about conversion rate. Calculate it super easy. All you do is take the number of orders you take from advertisements divided by the number of clicks. And like the big question is, how do you improve the conversion rate of your campaign? Well, first and foremost, eliminating wasted ad spend is a start, but you also want to find better, more relevant keywords for your products to show up for. And ideally, we'd also be making sure that our current keywords are as efficient as possible, right? And this is the big reason we set up that mirrored campaign structure.
Yeah, so that way you can be figuring out exactly what's performing specifically for your products in the auto campaign.
Right, so let's talk about explore and exploit.
Yeah, so that's the exploring piece, right? You're using those auto campaigns to explore, what customers are typing into that search bar, what are their search terms, which ones perform specifically well for your product, which ones don't, negate those ones, which ones do, add them to the coinciding manual campaign. And that's where we start exploiting them. So explore, exploit, and then let's get even more targeted. And within those manual campaigns, you have the ability to refine the match types. And this is going to be another place where you're just going to make sure that you're not overspending and you're really being targeted with those keywords.
Right. So let's use that baseball cap example again, right? We saw that baseball cap was a really expensive keyword. When we look at the customer search terms that are correlating to baseball cap, we can see that what people are typing in are Red Sox cap. What's actually getting you the sales is Red Sox cap. And that's what's converting at a really efficient ACOS. So of course, you want to add in Red Sox cap as a new keyword, right? It only makes sense. That's the less expensive keyword. It's longer tailed. It's more relevant to your product. So you definitely want to make sure that you're refining that target match type to at least a phrase match, and then take it a step farther. If you see a phrase match converting really well, you want to add it in as an exact match. Mm-hmm. So those are the big things that you can do to improve your conversion rate. And I mean, we talked about this before, right? Like the whole goal is to improve the conversion rate, because regardless of where a conversion comes from, if it's from advertisements or if it's from your organic sales, it impacts your overall business in a positive way. So how do you really measure this flywheel effect? We've been talking about improving your advertisements to maximize your profitability, but how does that relate to your overall business as a whole? I think that is the big question that is the hardest to answer. So with ACOS, I mentioned, right, it's pretty much like looking in a vacuum. It's so important to look at your ACOS and your advertising spend in comparison to your net profit, to see how much your ad spend and ad sales benefit your business as a whole. At the end of the day, ACOS is only going to show you your ad spend over your ad sales, but those 100 units that you sell with sponsored ads could contribute to 1,000 more organic sales, even if ACOS is 50% and over your product margin. So you may have to spend a little bit more initially on sponsored ad to get those sales, but all of these things impact your sales rank, your conversion rate, which leads to more product exposure, as Craig so articulately put it earlier today. So every month, go in there, download your advertised product performance report. We mentioned this one before. It will give you the spend, sales, conversion, ACOS for every product that you're advertising in every ad group. And then start comparing over time, right? Look at your ad sales, your ad spend, orders, ACOS, conversion over months, but also compare that to your total sales. Add that in to your profit and loss statement under your cost of goods sold, right? It's all related to your products. And see over time, are your organic sales positively impacted by your advertising spend, or are your margins decreasing? Are you spending too much? Have you not eliminated enough wasted ad spend? The goal eventually is to decrease the amount you're spending on advertising, because your organic sales are taking up the majority of your sales as a whole. You need to use advertisements to get you there faster. That's the end of discussion. I think that's like the end all be all of it. I just feel like very strongly about this.
Yeah, we want to make sure, this is the big question. Again, each product, you want to see improvements per product. You don't want to know if you're profitable per product, because you want to be using ads to be boosting those overall sales.
Right, and I mean, the goal is to see your ad sales increasing along your total sales with an ACOS beneath your product margin, right? So if we just briefly go through the takeaways, I think we hit on these points pretty hard today, right? Calculate your margin at the account level, supply level, and the product level. See where your money is going.
Set up your campaigns using that information, not only by category and by goal, but really importantly by margin when you're focused on profit. Number 3, you want to focus on improving ACOS. You're going to do that, by breaking down campaigns. You also want to be looking at, how can I reduce wasted ad spend, whether that's bid adjustments or negating, and then how can I improve conversion in order to improve profitability. And lastly, tracking your ad spend and your ad sales alongside your total sales to calculate your advertising cost of profit. Don't look at advertising in a vacuum. It needs to be taken into your total account profitability.
Exactly. So let's launch our last poll. Now that we've gone through everything, let's just see, after this webinar, what are the actions that you guys plan to take? So let's launch this now. Are you going to go in and analyze your V2 flat file to figure out what your margins are? Are you going to fix your campaign structure to group everything by category first and then by product margin second? Do you want to learn more about our sponsored products optimizer tool to see if we can help you manage the profitability of your campaigns in a better, faster way than any human could ever manually do it? Or do you want to sign up for our next webinar, which is focused on ACOS goals? So keep answering. We got about 50% of the vote in. Awesome.
Looks like a lot of campaign structure.
It's good.
Restructuring happening. So
There's actually a really good question by Charmaine. She asked, it's not the case of grouping products together with similar functionalities in one ad campaign. Is it more about grouping products with similar ACOSs? And I would say always group by category first and then group by margin second. So you want to have all your Yankees caps together, but then you would have different campaigns for the Yankees caps that have different margins. Okay, so let's stop it, close
this poll,
share the results.
What the results look like.
Cool, let's see. We have most people wanting to optimize your campaign structure based on product margin. Yep, that's what I would want to do too, I think.
And we have a really excellent, campaign creation guide, that snippet of that template that we showed earlier with our own products in it. That's something that we use on the customer success team, and that's open to, our help center is open to the public regardless of if you use Take Metrics Sponsored Products Optimizer or not. So for sure, take a look at that. It'll be really helpful.
100%. And it looks like we have like 2 minutes left, so we can briefly go through one or two more questions. I feel like we've hit the majority of them today, but if you guys have any other questions, please head over to our Take Metrics website. Perhaps we didn't get to yours. We're so sorry. We're both pretty chatty, so we ended up talking a lot, but hopefully we got to the majority of questions. Our website has a chat box. Please ask the questions you want to ask there.
And this is the link to our website. And if you're interested in learning more, you can, of course, get, we offer a free demo if you want to see, a lot of what we talked about today. Take Metrics has software to help you do that for you.
Yeah, so better, faster, super efficient. You can ask your questions here too. And then also, profitability is so important to us. We're so obsessed with helping sellers optimize for profitability here. It's like basically our mission statement. We have a new tool that's coming out eventually. We want to have you guys join the beta launch list for our tool, Take Metrics Flywheel, which will show you everything we talked about today, your total sales, all of the costs associated with your product, and tell you how much money you have left to spend for advertising. Right. So it's basically a total comprehensive look at your business as a whole and your advertising combined into there. It's going to be amazing. I'm so excited. And then lastly, next webinar. The most of you guys, 33% of you, wanted to sign up for our next webinar. So this is how we do it. Understanding your true ACOS, super important, super relevant to today's one, May 9th, 3 p.m. We'll see you guys there. And thank you so much for coming. It was a pleasure. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, @Take-A-Metrics. For everything dealing with selling online. We love Amazon and we love hosting these webinars, so hopefully you guys learned a lot. We'll be sending out a recording over the next few days, but thanks again and we'll see you guys soon.